Attendance of board members starting furthest to my left, please state your name for the record again.
Vasilio Supos.
Eva Gilio.
Scott Nelson.
Alex Kamalevich.
Julie Moon.
James Dolan.
Jessica Pritzker.
All right, welcome. We'll move along to the approval section. I'd like to ask for a motion and a second to approve the agenda.
So moved. Dolan.
Second Moon.
Jessica.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Motion carries. Next, we would like to ask for a motion and a second to approve the regular session minutes from July 21st.
So moved. Dolan.
Second, Gilio.
Gabby, may I have a roll call?
Supos.
Aye.
Gilio.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Kamalevich. Moon.
Aye.
Dolan.
Aye.
Pritzker.
Aye.
Motion carries. Now we have our communications section. Dr. Deli?
That's me. Hello, good evening, everyone. Welcome to those in attendance at our meeting this evening and those who are joining us remotely. As we begin the 25-26 school year, we're here, ready or not, here they come. We are ready. We have new and returning students numbering 4,266. That was as of a few hours ago. I imagine that number's changed already. Down about 50 students from last year. Now, over 8 school buildings, that's, I think it's fair to call that a flat enrollment year over year, at least from last year to this year. We also have new and returning employees numbering 835. The work we do here relies heavily on the partnerships between staff, with our families, our students, and the community working together to serve the children in this school district. We appreciate that teamwork. We rely on the teamwork. I'd like to provide several updates, actually, that have taken place over the summer, and I have more than I usually share, so I don't know, get comfortable here for a few minutes. We have had some construction projects this summer. Notably, roofing was updated at 6 of our schools. Interior renovation work was completed at Westbrook and Henking, particularly in the specials room, as we refer to them, and being finalized as we speak. Paving and asphalt was completed at Henking as planned. An outdoor learning space was added at Westbrook for the preschool program. And as a reminder, that was paid for out of our Preschool for All grant. As well as a new playground at Springman. So they have something to look forward to over there. In business services, good to be reminded that we are now managing our own financial investments rather than working through the township trustees model. And we've incorporated student supplies into our student registration. So this is the first year where we've got the school supplies being ordered through the registration process and distributed. On the student services front, several student services summer work groups took place this summer. Professional development occurred, including updates on Aaron's Law materials, risk assessment updates, motor group planning, dyslexia, and ILS curriculum planning. In our multilingual department, and as previewed by Raquel Kim a couple of different occasions, we had 9 student programs offered this summer. And we had 447 multilingual learners that participated in that programming. 14 family events took place in partnership with many of the community partners, the Park District, Glenbrook South, Wesley, the library. Really, when I mentioned earlier how we rely on the community connectivity with other organizations, it really played out so nicely this year in support of students and their families. There was 271 summer curriculum hours across 10 global language and bilingual teachers this summer that was very focused professional development. We have new administrators, of course. Lisa Engel, who is here this evening. Lisa, welcome to you as the principal of Springman Middle School. Allison Keller is the new assistant principal for teaching and learning at Springman. That name may sound familiar to you, former and returning employee. Amy Frederick is the new assistant principal at student services at Hoffman. Allison Friedman is the new assistant principal for student life at ATIA. And Mari Bliss is the new assistant principal for student services at ATIA. So we've had some changes. We welcome all of them. We also have new staff. We welcome 34 new staff members to the district this year, and 25 support staff members as well. So that it tracks right around what we typically have in terms of numbers from year to year. We had our new educator orientation that ran August 11th through the 15th. That is a jam-packed, and thank you to Kevin and your team and the cabinet team for planning out several meaningful days of orientation for our new employees. Covered a lot of ground. We also have a new communication platform, Parent Square, that has been communicated out, but the platform allows really for one-stop shopping for parents regarding the district, from the district, schools. It's really some great connective tissue that we look forward to utilizing and for parents to hopefully find helpful. We had additional professional development. 3 different administrator and teacher book study sessions took place with a couple of books that were specific to topics. Multiple sessions on phonics pilot training occurred with our K-3 teachers and coaches. And D34 coach and external professional development sessions were conducted for our 2 pilot programs that are Bridge to Reading and Really Great Reading. We also have a 6-8 ELA pilot selection process that took place in June to select 2 programs to teach this year. And subsequently, professional learning for the first pilot program took place with grades 6 through 8 ELA pilot teachers at the beginning of August. Finally, an exciting recognition I'd like to share. Each year we identify a theme to help guide our work. This year's no different. This year's theme is D34 Cares, and we've talked about that in a lot of different contexts, but we spent quite a bit of time at our administrator retreat, and we're going to do more work on just the importance of caring and how caring requires work and it requires effort. And it's a deliberate process to care. And so we're really emphasizing that. Related, we have an uplifting story that we'd like to share about an incoming student to Hoffman, Mateo. Mateo was out driving with his mom when they passed a homeless woman, and Mateo offered her all of the birthday money that he had been saving. This is a story that made several different news outlets. People Magazine and ABC 7 News reported on this. Just one example of the kindness of individuals within our school district, in this case a student. We're very proud of his compassion for others. One of his former teachers, Kate McNally, shared this is an awesome kid who's full of kindness, compassion, and really wants to change the world. And so we're very proud of Mateo for being such a kind person, and I thought this would be a good opportunity to recognize him. So those are my comments.
He also has a GoFundMe page if anyone wants to donate, because he's keeping his cause alive.
He does. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Deli. Next, we have our audience comments. This is the first opportunity for audience comments. Anyone wishing to address the board can submit a comment card available at the check-in table and give it to the Executive Director of Communications and Strategic Planning. The Executive Director will call community members who submit cards forward. They will be asked to introduce themselves and describe their relationship to the district. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes or less, and please know the board will be taking notes, but will be in listening mode only, and an appropriate response will be given in a timely manner. We ask that you only submit 1 comment per opportunity. We will have a second opportunity. Rebecca, do we have any comments tonight?
We have one so far, Mr. Seitz.
Thank you. Mr. Seitz?
Well, I didn't know if this was the, good evening.
Good evening.
I didn't know if this was going to be coming at the point in the agenda. I was going to be talking about the School Resource Officer Program. So since we're talking public comment, I thought I would comment on that.
Okay.
First off, I do live in, I've been here before. I do live in District 34. So my familiarity with this I'm familiar in two contexts. First off, I represent Nicor Gas, so I'm familiar with less affluent areas. So I'm familiar with this particular topic. I'm also familiar with school districts because I'm working on the football stadium to the west of you. So I'm very familiar with your finances. I'm very sensitive to your financial issues. So with that said, I would urge you to not approve this contract, similar to what I told you last year. And let me explain to you why. First off, I was looking for this. I was watching your agenda, and I was looking for this to be posted. I did ask the superintendent to pull this, just sort of a legal point first. Last week on Friday night, what was posted was a draft, and I asked him to ask your legal counsel to see if, and then a new document was posted. I had a 5 o'clock meeting, and then another document has been posted. So I asked your legal counsel to give me a document that says whether that's an Open Meetings Act violation, whether you did that properly. I don't think you did, but I think you ought to take a look at that. So let's talk about the school resource program. First of all, the whole idea of this, I was working on a change to the statute. This is controversial in that even those school districts that have it have had problems. So there's currently a bill that's sitting on the governor's desk, Senate Bill 1516, dealing with problems with officers that are enforcing school tickets. Now, perhaps in Glenview, none of your officers are all great guys. None of them are doing school tickets. But it brings up the problems with having police officers in schools. And so what I would say is, that this program is not free from problems. If you are going to have security issues, and certainly if you have issues with security, I would suggest you budget for it and you hire necessary security and secure your schools. The second problem that I have with this whole program is that the Village of Glenview is paying for, on the first two officers, is paying for 75% of the cost. And now you're expanding the program on the second year, where the Village of Glenview is paying 100% of the cost. And on the second year program, with the second group of officers, you have a...
Go ahead, you can keep talking,
No
Mr.
problem.
Seitz. Don't worry.
You have to me, and again, maybe this document has been revised, but this roving or SRO is not a defined function. So in various schools. So I would encourage you, and I do appreciate you. I'm probably over my time. I would encourage you to consider the school districts and the schools that don't have SROs. You won't see them. It's only the schools that don't have SROs where they have removed them that you see in the paper. But I would encourage you to consider that the downside of this. And the only other thing that I would say is I have looked at the PowerPoint presentation that the superintendent put on the website. Is just look at just a couple things. Now, if I had more time, I would go through this. But look at what your staff, how they review your program, and how it's over 50%, but it's not much over 50%, and it's better this year than it was last year. But look at how, for example, you had 22 African American students, and they answered the question differently. 100% answered it, saying that the school resource officer makes them safer. And then another question, they didn't have 100%. So, when you're asking a 10-year-old, I don't know how old these kids are, when you ask them a question, you're going to elicit answers. So I would just encourage you, just think about it. And I understand the financial restraints you're under. I understand the security restraints. I certainly don't envy your task. I would encourage you to just think about this. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you for your comments tonight. Rebecca, do we have any other comments?
We do not.
Okay. Next, we'll move along to our consent agenda, our consideration of resolutions. We have the 25053 personnel report, the 25054 payroll warrants, and the 25055 vendor warrants. Can I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as presented?
Second Pritzker.
Gabby, may I have a roll call?
Gilio,
Aye.
Melson,
Aye.
Kamalevich, Moon,
Aye.
Dolan,
Aye.
Pritzker,
Aye.
Supos.
Motion carries. Now we have our consideration of other resolutions, discussion and action. We will start with the 25056 SRO agreement extension. Dr. Deli?
Yeah, thank you. We have a few individuals that will speak to this topic tonight. I just wanted to sort of lead into it by saying that for your consideration this evening is an intergovernmental agreement with the Village of Glenview for a one-year extension of our current school resource program. All of the basic provisions of the renewal are the same as the previous 2 years, with one exception that I would like to point out, and that is there is now language in the agreement referring to a floating SRO. And this is an SRO that the village has designated to sort of divide up services across all of the schools and school districts in Glenview, both public and private. So this is an SRO, an officer, a sworn officer, just like the two that we have at our middle schools, that he divides up his time across many different schools and school districts according to, whatever wants or wishes that those individual schools have. And so, because the individual is technically an SRO and there was not language currently in our SRO agreement around this, it was advised that we include that. So that's what you would see different if you were to put the two side by side. We also have a presentation that we'd like to share, and I think Kristen, you and others will help guide us.
Yep. Thank you, Dr. Daly. I'm going to invite up our middle school representatives that are going to help us tonight with our presentation.
So I would say quickly that, and this is a slide that we've used before. This is not a new slide, but this really just is designed to depict what a school resource officer is. And these individuals, we have one at Atia, one at Springman. These are sworn law enforcement officers. They work with the Glenview Police Department and have for many years. They are uniformed officers. They're clearly identified within our buildings. They do carry a standard issue weapon. We want to be very clear and transparent about that. Their assignment happens to be a school, and we have one at each one of our middle schools. The thing I want to emphasize here is that the relationships that these officers have already built in just the last 2 years have been very profound. We have some testimonials not only from our principals, but also from staff and parents. There's different forms of data, both qualitative and quantitative, that we're going to share with you. We believe that the program is doing what it was designed to do, and it's providing important dividends to us as a school district, particularly at our middle schools. We'd like to share some of that information with you and ask for your consideration in renewing the agreement.
All right, so Dr. Deli kind of went over our SRO model, and it's just a general model. And although there are some common variables between the SRO model, we did make some variations for our district that is more beneficial for our students. So we're really building on positive and proactive relationships between the officers and our students and the faculty in our buildings. You have frequently seen that we participate in High Five Fridays, which was an initiative that was brought to us by the police department. They attend different events of ours, such as the Community Resource Fair, and they've really become an integral part of our responsive systems.
Before we start digging into some data, I just want some quick introductions of who's going to help us along with our reporting tonight.
Hi, I'm Megan Chin, the Assistant Principal for Student Services at Springman. Diana O'Donnell, principal of ATIA.
And Lisa Engel, principal at Spring Lake.
So as we've talked about SRO models a little bit already, all models are not equal, and we've been very, very intentional in how we wanted to develop our SRO model. If you had 3 different districts in front of us and we asked them how they implemented their SRO model, you would get 3 different responses. And so again, people might come to the table with a lens of what an SRO model is, but we have been very, very intentional about integrating our SROs into an already existing responsive system. And so this just illustrates what our responsive system looked like before the introduction of SROs. We are very, very fortunate that at the middle schools we have 3 social workers, 2 psychologists, we have 2 advocates through North Cook, we have many, many learning behavior specialists, which are special ed teachers, and we have an administrative team of 4. We also are lucky that we've developed an internship program over the last 5 or 6 years that also integrates interns, both social work and school psychology, into our middle schools. And so our system has been responsive. That's been our mission, that's been our strategic plan, and our adoption of an SRO model integrated that person into an already existing model. They are not a standalone. They are not in a silo. They are not operating in a way that we aren't all integrating what we're doing. And so I think that's really important when we talk about what our model looks like. We're very lucky that they entered an already existing responsive model. We always promise data. We get good feedback from this Board of Ed about how the data should look. And so we've made improvements to our data system so that it includes both quantitative and qualitative. We've made that commitment. We really closely and continually monitor data for very important reasons. We look at every different area. We've upgraded our PowerSchool system. This year we've collected data through our Panorama system. If you recall from our last year's presentation, we had data coming through Google Forms, and we weren't always able to look at data from various aspects of gender, EL status, special ed status, and race, and so we improved that systems to make sure that we're monitoring data in the way that we need to. So when we look at the data, we're going to show you a lot of different layers of data. We can't really say that the data that we show you tonight is because of the involvement of an SRO, because they are integrated into an already existing responsive system. It would be like showing you data to say it's because we have 3 social workers or because we have 2 psychologists. We can't really isolate the SRO as being the primary and only influencer on the data that you're going to see in just a sec. I think we've been really successful in integrating our SROs into this system, and you'll hear more about that. I think this turns it over.
So we're going to talk first about just looking at each school with ATIA being first. There's 3 types of behaviors that we focus on that are considered level 3 behaviors where we believe the SRO has a positive impact on, and that is physical contact, references to illegal behaviors such as drugs, also sexual references or behaviors of unkind terms could be considered bullying, is also a part of that, and how we're responding. So as Kristen already mentioned, we've increased in PowerSchool. We do have ability to have consistency with checking a box with SRO involvement. It's really important that it's not necessarily in a negative view because SR involvement, the SROs are trained at a high expertise on de-escalation strategies within the crisis response model. So a lot of their involvement can be calming a student down and creating that space where students are able to regulate so that there isn't a behavior. So we're coming from a proactive lens of supporting a child through a hard time or a difficult measure and trying to de-escalate behavior before that level 3 behaviors exist. So there's quite a variety of range in the student actions. So these have all decreased as far as our building overall feel with the amount of physical harm that students are incurring with each other. Our drug use, we'll talk a little bit more later, is relatively very few that we're seeing that drugs coming into our buildings, so that has diminished significantly. And then we're continuing to provide additional supports with awareness. So there's an awareness coming from the community of something happening with our students. There's an awareness with families that might be sharing information that we might not have privy to, but then we do, and we're able to be proactive in holding students more accountable for their behaviors before they escalate maybe even to that level 3. And so we're really able to intervene as a team. So that's just some of the data pieces for ATIA.
And you'll see the ATIA and Springman data is pretty comparable actually across all domains, which is always something that is nice to see we're trending positively across many categories. So just as an example, when we look through SRO involvement, I know Diana touched on this a little bit, but examples could be their involvement might be because they are the trusted adult. So after an incident happens, they already have that strong relationship with students, and the students are seeking them out to process. Sometimes it's also families. A lot of times Officer Nava is coming in and saying, Charlie Brown's mom called me and this is what's going on and I'm going to help support. They might need a little bit of extra help during recess. And then also just knowing that they are the student's trusted adult, but they also can be the parent's trusted adult. And so the relationships have been paramount. I know that we've talked about the success of this program, but really it's exceeded my expectations, and I feel like a large part of that is because the care that they have. You talked about the theme for this year. This program has been successful, but it also has largely been successful, I think, because we have the right people in the role. So we'll talk a little bit more about the relationships that they have later on with some of the additional data. But looking into the next section, I know in many of these areas we said sometimes they might be involved, sometimes they might not be. Drug offenses, our SROs will always be involved. And so this area, we have seen a significant decrease in. It's really exciting to see. And we were just talking in Diana's office, kind of hypothesizing why, right? Like Kristen said, it's not solely due to an SRO in the building, but certainly the trend has been positive and significant. So one of the biggest pieces that we've seen is that preventative piece. They are so informed by our students. It's not something that we were expecting, that students would be kind of flocking to them with information, but kids do see them as a trusted adult. They're talking about things that are happening in the community, things that they're maybe exposed to or that they're hearing that their friends are engaging in. And so because of that, it's allowing us to be much more proactive and responsive, not only to individual students, but trends in the community or just trends across our building. So it's been a huge piece, also just the investigation time we used to have when we were having this occurring so frequently in our building. Just in general, it's allowing all of us to be more responsive to our students' needs and more available for all the other pieces that come during middle school.
And we rarely have a second offense of any drug use because we're using community resources for supports for family with peer youth services and other community engagement. So there's always a learning component. So we're able to spend more time not having the discipline piece, which we are there for as administrators, providing that, but also there for providing more of the learning opportunities to change behavior, right? Explicit instruction, skill-based, looking at the Kessel competencies. So we're able to provide more education for our children to make a better understanding of making the good choices for their well-being.
Okay, so now we're going to shift into some survey results. We do survey our students through the Panorama survey. You've all seen the results of that based on some feedback that you gave us at our last meeting, which was great feedback. We integrated some specific questions into our Panorama survey so that we could look at the data at different levels: race, gender, bilingual background, low income. So it really has helped us be a little bit more sophisticated in our data analysis. And so you'll see that those were layered in, and we'll give you some results. Let's see. You can go ahead and go on to the next one. So this first question is our only longitudinal question that we'll be able to show you tonight, because this has always been part of our Panorama survey. Students respond to the question, I feel safe at school. And this isn't specifically geared towards because of an SRO, it's just, do they feel safe? Is there that feeling of safety, belonging, well-being? And so We always want 100%, but the percent that you see on the answer distribution is favorable responses. And so at the end of the 24-25 school year, 92% of the students who responded felt that they feel safe at school. In the corner, the left-hand bottom corner, I did give some longitudinal. So in 22-23, at the end of that school year, we ended the year at 88% favorable responses. In the 23-24 school year, we ended at 91 favorable responses, and then 92 here for the year just ending last year. You can see the red arrow with the 2 next to it, and that's just a slight decrease of 2 percentage points since the winter benchmark, and that's not unusual in the spring. I hear Megan Chin kind of, that's not unusual. Like, kids are ready for summer vacation, and so their response rate might be a little bit off, but even a decrease in 2%, that's not something that we're extremely worried about. So we ended the year at 92%. We strive for 100%. We don't look at these numbers and say, oh, this is a good number, we're good. We strive for 100% always. So I did add some racial data because I know that that was also something that everyone was very interested in. And so this, again, this global question of I feel safe at school. So from winter to spring, there were some increases in certain races, as you can see on the screen, and a slight dip with the Hispanic race.
And then looking at the questions we added this year specifically related to the school resource officer, we did administer this to our students, and students were asked, the presence of a school resource officer makes me feel safer in school than without one. And you can see the answer distribution here, where about 95%, which is just over 1,100 students from both of the middle schools, answered favorably. You will note that this number doesn't include the students who selected the no opinion. So that you see is 245 students, which we do obviously keep an eye on. That number of students is pretty large. So overall, though, the favorable answers were up 1 percentage point from the winter for this particular question. And then you'll see here the same responses of data broken down by demographics. The third column there is the number of students from both middle schools who answered the survey question from that particular race, and then followed by the next column, which indicates the percentage of those who answered favorably from that particular race. And then again, the last column is just indicating the change, if any, from the winter data collection period. And then sort of the same thing here. So you'll see on the next slide, students were also asked to respond to the statement, having a school resource officer in my school has a positive impact on the environment. The answer distribution is here for you, and overall 96%, which is approximately, again, 1,100 students answered favorably. As Kristen said, it's not necessarily uncommon that we see some shifts in the data towards the end of the year, and we did see here a shift in more students answering in that no opinion range there. So the spring is the third time they're taking the survey, so just something to be noted. And then the next slide, again, is that same question broken down by demographics. And there were some shifts in data here. I think we kind of expect a mild fluctuation in some of the data points, but nothing super significant.
One of the goal areas that we have as a district with our strategic plan is sense of belonging. It's the most important thing for our staff, our students, and our whole community. This is kind of a pictograph, or it's called a word cloud. So every student at each of our middle schools, we identify a trusted adult. If the student doesn't identify their own trusted adult, we talk with the student, figure out who that trusted adult might be. That trusted adult knows that that student is their kind of their go-to with communications and and supports. And so this was an opportunity where students could fill in the blank and add whatever name they would like, and the size of the graphic represents the number of times that certain students put certain teachers or staff members. And you can see that the two officers and we know this is a collaborative supports, again, with all of our staff, making a connection with students. And also ALOP is one of the larger names on there as well. Yeah.
So just like how our students, just so similar how our students were asked that, do you think the presence of an SRO makes you feel safer in school than without an SRO? Our staff were asked the same question, and you can see that our staff's favorable responses were up 4% from last year. So 81.8% of our staff reported feeling safer in school with our SRO than without. It was 77% previously. That could be for a variety of reasons. Another thing we were talking about, it could be our SRO is there every day walking the halls, they're checking the doors, they're walking around the outside of the building, so just some of those safety checks. But they're also our first link when we need like a first responder. They are direct access to the police. So I think for several different reasons, our data went up in this area in regards to staff safety. And then very similar, different wording of the question, but how safe do you feel in school with the presence of a school resource officer? Again, this is our staff responding. The indicating feeling very safe was up, again, about 4% from last year. So about 61% of our staff reported feeling very safe in the building with an SRO present. And then you can see, of course, the different levels of safety, but in general, most of our staff are feeling very safe having an extra, a police officer, an extra support person in the building.
I think another piece just to add to that is we don't realize our overall health and wellness of a crisis of a staff member or a student for medical needs. And so that's not actually a part of the presentation, but the response time, because the officer is right here, it even cuts it quicker, because we don't necessarily even have to get on a 911 line to get someone here from Glenview. So we've had some health issues with some of our students and staff members, and they've just been able to respond so quickly. It's pretty incredible that the overall care of the person in the building is also addressed if there's an emergency. A little bit more about education. This is an area that is still an area of growth for us. We've made some strides. For example, our SRO helps support all the safety drills with all of our staff, reunification pieces, which we've all had as a district, some more training on that to keep our whole community safe in case of a crisis, and that knowledge of being able to keep our community safe at all times. Our SROs are building PD or teaching experiences for students. They've been part of our life skills programming for drug prevention, understanding nicotine and the impacts of overall health, alcohol as well, understanding legal systems in general within our social studies protocols, and
Career day.
yeah, the career.
Talking about career opportunities.
A lot more career connections. One of the areas that we'd like to target a little bit more is still this influence that we all know exists, which is social media and the impacts of cyberbullying and the unkindness that we are finding in social media, and to try to beef up the power of our words when we put them in writing, as well as direct verbal comments towards peer-to-peer interactions.
All right. So, yes, thank you. So again, this is a common theme I think we're seeing across slides, but just our data is trending favorably. And so again, when staff were asked how they would rate the overall impact of the school resource officers, we've gone up to 61% from 52.6% just over the last year. There's also been value in our collaboration. So talking about, there's a lot of similarities between our SROs and what their day-to-days look like, and there's also different things that are happening at each building. So we're also learning from each other's experience as we're planning for the upcoming year.
And much like Megan just alluded to, the collaboration, you can see lots of the different ways where an SRO has supported our staff ensuring a safe school environment. We've definitely seen a big emphasis on school safety, so building those positive relationships, making sure, like Diana mentioned, our SRO helps in all of our safety drills. They're always there to reflect. If we have a question of just, hey, if this happened, what would you do? They're like that first person to give us some advice or some feedback. They're there for every, fire drill that might happen. They're there on hand. They're just like an extra source of resource. And they're making sure that we feel as secure in our environment as possible. Students see our SROs as just another trusted adult that they can go to in the building. Oftentimes, they go to our SROs, so do their families. It could be a weekend, it could be after school hours. They're making sure that they can find them so they can report whatever they need to. They're checking in at school. It's definitely, we've seen positive change because of it. We said that, our SROs have such a positive pulse on the building. They know what's going on socially. They have families reaching out. They can really mentor some of our students and help them make good choices. Officer Nava has just been a fabulous presence at Springman, and I know we know Officer Mike too, just because we collaborate. We see him at the resource fair, we see him throughout the building if we're ever popping by ATIA, and we know that he's also always on hand, working quickly, diligently, helping make sure that he's there for staff and students, and making sure everybody is safe. And then we also mentioned that even though a lot of the feedback really from our staff says that our SROs, they already have these really strong relationships with kids, we know that there's always room for improvement. And so like Diana mentioned, kind of coming up with some more programs where our SROs can be a leader in things like social media and helping with cyberbullying and helping educate some of our parents. I know they reach out and they want that help and that support. And then at Springman, we're also looking to possibly bring Officer Nava into the classroom more. She's been doing a lot of small group things, but just coming in and doing more of a whole classroom presence, pushing into those life skills classes more often when appropriate. And so I think that's somewhere where we definitely want to grow in this year.
Kids also, I think we see if there'd be less of a friend, be more authoritative. We were just saying by being in the classroom, she is a trusted adult, and so a lot of times, students might be looking for their trusted adult during the day, and they're like, if you're in the classroom, they'll be looking for you in the classroom instead of the halls. So that's an area too that we continue to focus on to grow in.
I think we answered these.
Yeah.
So the next slide. So once again, we are collaborating as a middle school team. And we're also working with our SROs with the middle school team. We also have support with the district when we connect with any changes that might be happening with the police organization as well as the district. So we're continuing to, build that consistency and the area of where the most consistency needs to be on the PD or the instruction and education that we're providing within that programming. I think the overall safety and security, especially in some of our spaces especially at TIA, we are in the middle of your community or our community, and we have so much public. We have access to everyone's available and that. So it's not as secure with the land and all of the roads and intersections we have. So it's really great to have that presence, especially outside when others are jogging and doing all different things, or dogs that come by, which we love. But really that proactive peer-to-peer piece and that overall safety is just so critical for our students and for our staff. And then how quickly that we can respond if there is a need of a crisis situation. So that has been really the piece. And then the proactive measures. I just love the fact that we're really able to help kids transform their thinking about their actions and be more thoughtful in the education of why we're making those decisions or how we can help support what's the root cause of it. So I think that's really where our kids are growing and they're shining in the things that they're able to learn and know that, yeah, we are kind of watching here, and we want to make sure we can support those positive choices, which have increased. We look at some of these things from a lens of what's the level 3, but we also can look at the levels that so many students don't have locks and are very proactive. So I think that's another thing that we could share more, but it is everyone making an impact on the community. Anything else that we wanted to add?
So what's ahead? There is something that we are keeping on our radar, which is Senate Bill 1519. It is on the governor's desk as we speak. I checked this morning. And so this came out of some investigative reporting that some districts' models of the SRO were excessively ticketing or sending citations for municipal code violations, and then they were the kids were entering the court system before they needed to because of this. And so this bill intends to take care of that and to prohibit entirely, really, the use of any kind of municipal code violation ticketing as a form of student discipline. We do not do that. Our model does not do that. And it stresses the need for a more restorative approach for discipline, which we do. And so it is sitting on the governor's desk. If it is signed as is, we would have some variation to our IGA for next school year. If it comes to that, it might be amended to some degree, or it might be vetoed completely. So we're keeping an eye on this. Any changes would take place July 1, 2026. Some of the stipulations in it, we were very pleased when we saw it because we already do it about making sure that the stakeholders have a voice, making sure that we're focusing on restorative approaches, making sure that we have a good data system. ISB wouldn't even require a formal data reporting system till the 27-28 school year, and we're already in a pretty good position where we are looking at data. So this is on our radar, and we'll probably hear soon about where the status of this is. So more to come.
And just to wrap it up, the bottom line of this presentation is that it does align directly with our strategic plan goal of belonging and well-being. We want to ensure that all of our students feel safe and our staff feel safe when they're in the building. And after reviewing 2 years of data, we feel that we're excited to continue with this program and with our SROs that we have in place.
Thanks for the presentation. Does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask?
I think you covered it, but just to confirm, the legislation on the governor's desk is not going to change our model because that's not how our model is structured.
Right, and so if he does sign it, or if this is passed as is, there'll be very few changes. There's some additional requirements where we have to assemble like a parent advisory committee, just so that we're also sharing data with that type of committee, which we already have a parent advisory committee. That would be very easy. But most of what is involved in that Senate Bill 1519 will not impact us because we don't ticket kids for municipal code violations. We don't give citations for that. We always stress restorative. And remember, I had mentioned that everyone's SRO model is their SRO model, and our model is such that we take a restorative approach, and the SRO is part of a bigger responsive system. It's not a standalone police officer. So if this does pass, there will be very minor changes to what we do.
Minor changes in terms of our practice, but I think you could potentially see a substantively different, in terms of its appearance, agreement from what you're entertaining tonight, depending on how that language turns out. But in terms of practice, we feel like we're already there in many areas.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
So 2 things. First of all, I want to say thank you for the additional demographic data this time, which was an ask last year, as you mentioned, and definitely, is a reason why it wasn't asked was some concerns we had when we started off the program. Second, I wanted to ask what the rationale was for not including the no opinion responses in the aggregated score.
Yeah, that would, it's just a neutral response, and so it doesn't count of a favorable response, and it's not an unfavorable response. It's just a neutral when kids check no opinion. And so when we look at the 96 or the 92 favorable, we don't like kids to put no opinion, but they're teenagers, right? And so they put no opinion. We would have liked, because it is a big sample size of like 272, we would have preferred that they made a choice and not just put no opinion, if I'm answering your question. Because
Yeah,
it would have
sure.
been it would have made our data more rich so that we could interpret it.
Yeah, I mean, I might, you know,
Take that out next year?
what, don't let
Make them have an opinion.
We did ask
wouldn't
about
do
that.
that.
We did ask about that, but then we would be eliminating ourselves from the Panorama national norms because that's how they built their data system. We did actually ask that exact question.
I tend to see no opinion, which I would say keep in, but as to be indicative in and of its own. Now, I recognize they're children, so,
Right.
you know, how far can we take that? But, I mean, without it, you don't leave yourself a lot of headroom for further, you know, improvement. And also, when we look at the demographic splits, you know, these are obviously aggregated scores on just, you know, the two levels of favorable, but if there's something below here where we see differences in no opinion from demographic to demographic group, that could be very indicative of something. So
And the art is in
I'm
the
also willing
yeah.
to be overruled and have someone say that's actually a dumb idea
Well,
with
I
this
mean, the art is
population, but
in
that's
the
how I think
interpretation.
about it.
Yeah, the art is in the interpretation, and so the teams can really dig in to see like what kids are responding no opinion and try to figure out and hypothesize why that response is coming up so much. So they really dig into the data. I wish I could encapsulate on this PowerPoint how much data analysis that they do. So
I assumed that.
Yes.
That there was a lot of analysis because you guys always do, so.
I think a bigger piece just, you know, you're right there, it's unknown, right? Because we can dig into who to responded that way, but we could also say we look at all the data that's coming through Panorama as a system to be able to identify if any of those students, like our biggest thing is making sure that they're connected and getting the supports. And so if anyone is below 3 are those levels, then our team comes together to get those supports on that, and they're just not answering that question. What we could try to do is a little more emphasis of the importance when students are taking it, just like when they're taking any standardized assessment or test, and really encourage and have the teachers really, let's try to make an opinion. We can say that, but we can't change the platform for Panorama. Those could be a couple strategies that we could utilize with the students. So we have less of that number, you know,
Sure,
to get
yeah.
more accurate.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm mainly suggesting is, you know, and we have this challenge quite often with our data because our data tends to be uniformly good. You have to then really where you have to find more differentiation. And this one seems an obvious one
Yes.
to me. You're not going to see, like with that second, you know, there's 3% on that second one giving you a negative. Like that, there's no headroom
Right.
there. So if it
Exactly.
were me, you know, my next would be where do I move on that no opinion?
Yep.
You know, and if there's no movement, right, you know, you could come back next year and say, you know what? There's just a certain percentage, you're going to be apathetic whether we like it or not. We can move on. But until we do that,
Yeah.
we can't say that, you know, and that's something we could say and we should try to, especially when the data puts us in that difficult to analyze box.
Well, to your point, if they have no opinion in the spring, how many didn't have an opinion in the winter?
Right.
Right, so one of my just to build on what Alex was saying, is to what extent are those individual responses when aggregated changing, right? So looking at, if you have seasonal, right, fall, winter, and spring, did anybody change their opinion? Because that's positive movement in one direction, or negative movement in another direction, and looking at what those overall changes are from the beginning to the end of the school, particularly when you think of like, oh, we're year 1, year 2, year 3 of the SRO model, there are going to be 8th graders who have been part of the whole experience. There are going to be 6th graders and 7th graders, they're going to have a different cohort and population as well. So one of the things as we look through this going forward is how else can we ask the next question and not go down to the individual level, but use all the data that you have to look at trends, and not just point in time.
Yep. And we do just a little bit about the trends, so knowing that a third of the population changes. Every fall, we see a dip, especially in sixth grade, where there's more uncertainty, you're not maybe feeling as safe because you don't know trust adults, they're still with your upperclassmen, and all the typical things that come with transitioning to a new building. And then in the spring, we often see an increase in some of those level 3 behaviors. Like students treat each other with respect, for example. That's a goal area of ours. Every spring, we see a dip in that. Every year, regardless of the population, that we just see a little bit of an uptick. So knowing that and seeing those trends is important, and that's what we use to drive some of our SIP planning too. Yeah.
Just to give another example, on the presence of a SRO makes me feel safer in school than without one, the African-American demographics at 100%. Does that mean everyone responded agree or strongly to agree? Or does that mean 5 did and the rest said no opinion? That's a huge difference. Yeah. Now, it's also a small N, and maybe we can't share publicly because the N's so small, but that's fine. But that's my point. That's a very significant difference.
Yeah. And Panorama does break it down by individual students, so that's something we do too. We review it teams and go just student by student to target follow-up conversations or follow-up interventions.
Yeah, and likely, just as well as James said, it also went up 5%. So something that with a small enough N, that's actually even more significant. So anyway, but overall, I know I'm getting nerdy on the data, but I really do appreciate the work that's gone into this and making what was, certainly something that a lot of people had concerns about from a programming standpoint, very much a success and integrated in the schools so far. So again, thank you for all the hard work.
We appreciate the questions and feedback. It's good for us to think about how to look at data that way. Thank you.
Thanks. Anybody else have any thoughts? All right. Well, if that's the case, thanks for your presentation. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I think the air conditioning is back on, too.
Wow.
All right. If that's the case, could I ask for a motion and a second to approve the resolution as presented?
So moved, Pritzker.
Second, Dolan.
Gabby, may I have a roll call vote?
Nelson.
Aye.
Kemalevich.
Aye.
Moon.
Aye.
Dolan.
Aye.
Pritzker.
Aye.
Supos. Gilio.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next, we'll move along to 25057, resolution authorizing the emergency expenditure of funds and the approval of an emergency transportation agreement. Dr. Deli?
Yeah, thank you. So before there are 3 items here for your consideration in a row. Before we break those down, I just wanted to make a couple of general comments about this, because there are several actions related to special education transportation services. Numbers 2, 3, and 4 on your agenda. Unfortunately, it came to our attention just a few weeks ago that our current primary service provider for special education transportation, Safeway, is experiencing some financial and organizational challenges. We believe that it resulted in the risk to reliably provide services starting this fall for our special education students, to the point where we couldn't simply just wait and see what happened. We needed to take action and make sure that we had some reliable transportation options at our disposal to get the school year started. While we hope the company can right-size its organization and continue its service at some point, we don't feel confident doing that now. And so the subsequent actions that you'll take will help us get reestablished with actually multiple companies to help achieve the objective of getting these children safely to and from school. So Eric, do you want to speak about the first item here?
So,
Any more?
we typically we build a runway of a couple months to do some type of a bid, RFP, what have you. So we just didn't have the time. And the attorneys who sat in on all the meetings we had with Safeway throughout the last number of weeks agreed this is sort of an emergency situation. So this first agenda item is a resolution that just allows the board to enter into agreement with other companies and sort of skip the bid process based on the...
Because of an emergency situation.
Exactly. So that's the first one.
All right, does anybody have any questions about the first resolution? If not, can I get a motion and a second to approve the resolution authorizing the emergency expenditure of funds and the approval of an emergency transportation agreement as presented?
So moved, Kamalevich.
Second, Gilio.
Gabby, may I have a roll call, please?
Kamalevich.
Aye.
Moon.
Aye.
Dolan.
Aye.
Pritzker.
Aye.
Supos. Gilio.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye. Motion carries. Next, we'll go on to 25058, first student transportation agreement.
That's right. It's a standard agreement. Attorneys have reviewed
It's
it.
a one-year agreement?
It's a one-year agreement. It's very likely we'll be coming to the board in the next number of months, maybe just to see how the opening of schools goes, track a little bit about what's going on with Safeway, and put the bid out. Then the board will have the opportunity to kind of see how the first couple months unfold and make a decision about the future. So this is 1 year emergency first student agreement. Pricing is very similar, surprisingly, to our current pricing. There's a startup gentleman who's helping us, and drivers did dry runs on Friday, and we feel as good as we can, given the situation with first student.
Does anyone have any questions about the first student transportation services agreement? If not, can I have a motion and a second to approve the resolution as presented?
Second, Moon.
Gabby, may I have a roll call?
Moon.
Aye.
Dolan.
Aye.
Pritzker.
Aye.
Supos. Gilio.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Kamalevich.
Aye.
Motion carries. And then finally, we have the 25059 303 Taxi Specialized Transportation Services Agreement.
That's right. And so this is what I would call a backup, because First Student is also helping some other districts. They're our primary provider, but we need backup. Sometimes first week of school, we get a variety of different, situations with students, and we need to have a backup plan, and that's what this is, agreement with 303 Taxi, who we've been working with to sort of ramp up if the need arises.
Does anyone have any questions about this Specialized Transportation Service Agreement? If not, may I have a motion and a second to approve the resolution as presented?
So move, Gilio.
Second, Dolan.
Gabby, can I have a roll call vote?
Dolan.
Aye.
Pritzker.
Aye.
Supos. Gilio.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Kamalevich.
Aye.
Moon.
Aye.
Motion carries. I also want to thank you guys for keeping us up with emails throughout the summer about the challenges that we're facing for this. And I'm
Absolutely.
glad we were able to get something settled before school started.
Can I ask an overall question before we
Please
move
do.
on? Just wondering if you could share a little bit, Dr. Deli, Eric, about what the plan is for meeting families' needs during this major transition right before school starts, and how the district is communicating with families.
Yeah, sure, thank you for that. So we had some generalized communication that went out to parents of special ed students that basically foreshadowed that a change was coming. So everyone received that. And then each family received an individual communication, but was it in writing and a phone call, or?
Well, the assistant principals at each building are reaching out, starting with families that might have some difficulty understanding the transition, and then moving through the list of their own students at the building. So they're getting
So it's a
some.
point of personal contact, as well as something that documents the fact that, this is the transportation company that's coming, this is your scheduled pickup time, et cetera. So we've done that really on kind of the macro and then the micro level.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. If not, we'll move to our discussion section. We have the unaudited fiscal year 25 financials.
So every month, once the budget's approved, we give the board an update every month on how things are trending. The last report we give you is a couple months shy of the end of the fiscal year, so we like to recap how the year did actually end up looking. And so here we look at our operating funds, budgeted versus actual revenues, and we ended up with a little over $1 million, or 1.2% more than budget. Not every single fund ends up the way you want it to look, but in large part, pretty good, 1%. I'm comfortable with that, especially when we look at how it matches up with the expenses, because our fund balance as a percent of expenses can only keep pace if both the fund balance grows along with the expenses. So you're always looking to put just a little bit into your fund balance to keep up that percent. And I won't bore you with the details, but in the presentation that'll be posted online, we've got some of the more micro variances. When it comes to our operating funds budgeted expenses versus actual expenses, we ended up with 3.5 million less expenses than we had budgeted. Also, good news, I would say, mindful spending. Again, a budget is an estimate of expenses, not a prediction of exactly how we'll end. Again, more details for later review. But then when we put together the actual revenues versus the actual expenses, we ended the year with a $7.6 million surplus and about 8.6% of total expenses. And put it all together in all funds, you see the result of us continuing to spend capital project money on the remainder of our referendum work. And then you sort of put it together and you see that revenues came in 1.2 above estimates, expenses 3.8 below estimates, resulting in a 7.6 surplus, of which this board transferred $5 million out of that budget to help offset the additional construction overage. So just putting that 2.6 toward operating fund balance. And that's all we got.
Does anyone have any questions? Eric, can I ask, for O&M, the purchase services was way down. Was that a budget item that we just didn't expend, or is it?
So that was the $3 million that we set aside. We started to set aside, but didn't quite need it last year.
That's what
That was part of the $5 million that went toward offsetting.
But that, yeah, and we always expected in the first few years after the referendum work, that we wouldn't spend that.
Because everything is pretty new.
Right.
Exactly.
But going forward.
Right, this summer.
We'll be spending that.
You'll continue keeping it in the budget.
Yes.
Otherwise, we'll be doing another referendum in 20
years.
For capital. Although, we probably won't be here.
Well, I won't, but you might.
Okay. I wanted to call out I was looking through the food service was 7% savings, which given the shift to more baking from scratch, and I believe quality is up, is just, that's great. I mean, it's maybe not be a huge number, but that's impressive, so.
Yes, I agree.
Any other questions for unaudited fiscal year 25? If not, we could go to fiscal year 2026 budget presentation, Eric.
Okay, we've been talking about this one for a couple months. I'll call it minor updates to this final version that we have. So on the screen here is, again, all of our funds. If you recall, last time we discussed this, operating fund deficit was at 2.7 million. Now we're at just 1.7 million. We got confirmation about preschool for all funding. We got some confirmation about some increased Title I funding. Those are the only two changes, I believe, that contribute to this deficit going down. Always 75% of our, typically 75% of our expenses go towards salary and benefits. This is also a good time to mention that when it comes to benefits that are baked into this fiscal year, we have a health plan year that lines up with the calendar year. Tomorrow night, Compensation Committee will be taking a look at some opportunities to potentially shift from a self-funded PPO model to a cooperative model, still under Gallagher, and preliminarily, I think that the numbers look good. So part of that conversation is sort of baked into this budget, so it's very likely that toward the end of this fiscal year, our benefit costs may look better than are currently budgeted. So I just thought I'd mention that now. When looking at all the revenue assumptions, what I typically do for the new board members is I'll highlight in red any changes. So based on this, there's no changes from the tentative budget for our local revenue assumptions. Again, some of the state funding, some of the federal funding is what increased since the tentative. No changes in expense assumptions. We didn't know exactly how the benefit conversation was going to play out, and obviously we started this process months ago, so we left in the typical assumption for health benefit increases. And put all the funds together, we're looking at a $7.8 million deficit. Again, result of construction. $7 million is baked into this fiscal year. And when we look at all the operating funds, now we see a deficit of just 1.7 million and 1.7 million. Just to recap, part of our 3-year curriculum savings plan is baked in. We've got $1 million this year for any curricular materials that come due. Always trying to show you the effects of this budget, final budget version, and how it could play out in our operating fund balances the year progresses. And new this year is a recommendation when it comes to taking a look at our fund balance and are we at risk of having too much. There are objectors out there who will challenge school districts who have arguably too much sitting in fund balance. One of the new ratios that's out, a part of PA 1030394, is take a look at this combining ending cash and investments along with your average and look at the ratio. Obviously, you can see, you can see here based on that 25-year, we're at half. We're not at risk of having like double your fund balance, which puts you at risk for rate objections. So moving forward, it's recommended that we show this every year to the board, community, just as a reminder to know that we're in decent shape where we'd like to be according to fund balance, and there's no threat of...
I'd prefer a higher fund balance for safety right now, but...
Great point, especially because the rumor is property taxes in Cook County are yet again going to be at least 3 months late.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. No one's received their bills yet. So does that mean we might be talking about
Yes.
issuing some sort of temporary debt?
So we are in the process now. We just needed to get up and running with school. We'll go back to PMA. We'll talk cash flow, and we'll see. There's a December 1 bond payment that I don't think we have the flexibility for. That's what we'll talk to the attorneys. It's possible we need to look at some short-term funding just to bridge that gap. But I will conduct the analysis and get back to the board soon.
But if we were one of those school districts that had twice as much money as their fund, we wouldn't have a problem, right?
Yes. You wouldn't have a problem in that way. Highlighting just the fact that expenses, outpace our revenues based on this one-time $2.75 million True North withdrawal fee. $1 million earmarked for curriculum materials. We've got $7 million baked in for construction costs. And the budget, yes, now includes this ongoing $3 million every year for building maintenance. Just some of the requirements for the budget. Look toward next month. We're going to hold a public hearing for this FY26 final budget. We'll get all the documents sent into to the various agencies in October, and like we talked about here. Potential changes in healthcare coming up, and speaking of the budget and audited financials, a small committee of us actually met and interviewed several auditors one auditor of which who submitted a proposal for the recent RFP. That recommendation will be coming to the board soon as well for an approval on a contract for their services moving forward.
Along those lines of the $2.75 million you have for the True North membership fee, that's a number that we're not sure of, so we're just keeping that in the budget.
That's it.
Just merely a placeholder.
It's a placeholder.
We have some strong opinions about the accuracy of that number that we'll be pursuing.
Good. Yeah, that's part of our plan.
So that's all for the final FY26 budget.
Any questions? All right, you'll keep us up to date on that. This is the second opportunity for audience comments. Becca, do we have any comments?
We do not.
Next one. Oh, yeah, True North update, sorry. All right, so True North has a meeting this Wednesday we'll be going to. I don't know if anyone knows, the superintendent, Dr. Schneider, resigned as of July 11th, so they had a special meeting to interview interim superintendents for this year, and there will be a contract offered to some individuals. And then there is a concurrent group of attorneys from all the other school districts that are meeting to discuss two parallel paths, I believe, at this time. One, to keep True North in a different format, or another, to dissolve and see what they do. So we have a meeting this Wednesday. There'll be two other special meetings in September to discuss those plans. And once that's done, then the board will take a vote on which way they want to go. So, yeah, there's a lot of things in flux, but we want to remind everybody that any special education students that are participating in True North programming are always going to be taken care of.
And independent of the directionality, come June 30th of '26, we will no longer be members of the cooperative.
Yes. So there's a lot of moving targets here, and it's a very large board, so it's really interesting to see how this shakes out. But as Dr. Deli says, we will be leaving July 1st, 26. Is that correct? Yeah. Any other questions on True North? All right, good. Now I'll go to audience comments. No audience comment?
Nope.
Okay. Now we have our report section. We have the number one FOIA report. There was no FOIAs, right?
That's crazy.
Yeah, no.
I have one, it's just not due
Okay.
by the time we were doing the report.
Mm-hmm. Any other business? If not, we're adjourned. Thank you for everyone for coming tonight. Thanks. Careful
Thank you,
going home.
presenters, and those in attendance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yes, should be exciting on Thursday.